Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Excited to kind of have a conversation on AI-powered enterprise QV stack. This time I've got learned panelists as well along with me. Maybe we'll kind of give it few minutes for more people to join in. Maybe a couple of minutes. Uh, uh, RK and Igna, I'll kind of we'll keep you waiting for a few more minutes until we kind of have more people joining in. I see that more people are joining in. Maybe another couple of minutes until we see. For those who have joined, thank you so much. Thanks for taking out your time. This series of webinars, have been, really seeing a good, response, and then, we have also had a great feedbacks from the last, webinars. And this time, even the topic that we picked, was based on, a lot of, inputs we got in from the last time. So, really looking forward to kind of, have a. I'm sure, audience are going to kind of will have a good takeaways from this session today. Maybe thanks for your time, thanks for joining. Maybe another minute. Great. I think we can give it a start. Again, welcome each and everyone. Thanks for kind of joining this webinar today. RK and Yagna, thank you so much for your time. To all the audience, we have Mr. Ramakrishna, RK with us today. RK is a a competent and well-known technocrat in the testing industry, and have got a great experience of having built a large center of excellences in software testing, test automation, performance engineering, etc. I'm sure it would be great for us to kind of pick his brains on this important, essential, and yet interesting topic in the the current times, basically, right. Thank you so much, RK. Thanks for your time and joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Dheeraj.
Great, thanks, RK. Yagnanarayana has been also comes with a great rich experience in terms of having built high performing software testing teams with his rich 17 years plus experience in terms of building strong test automation teams, and again with a lot of focus and emphasis on AI. It would be great for us to kind of learn from Yagna also in terms of how he has been kind of his perspectives in terms of quality engineering, and also the sort of results that he was able to see from the AI implementation. So Yagna, we are very excited to kind of listen to you two today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Dheeraj.
Great, great, everyone. Thank you so much. I think I see more people joining in, but again, we'll make a start. RK and Yagna, right? So while we have been, we are in the very interesting times, where the technology is kind of seeing, while it has been kind of seeing accelerated changes, every year or so. I think now we are in those times with the sort of a artificial intelligence revolution, if I may kind of call it that way, where we are seeing innovation at scale, innovation at great speeds every month, right. In the times like these, with the sort of great innovations coming in. While we have also been hearing a lot in terms of how are the companies, technology companies, kind of trying to adapt that, and especially what sort of a role the QA teams have got to kind of contribute and play in this. Maybe to kind of also help us to kind of understand, to kind of set that quick premise, in terms of how are the technology companies nowadays kind of trying to have a AI vision for this, for their organizations. And how do you kind of see, maybe in your respective organizations, or in general, from your expertise or experience, how is that QA should also kind of QA is also kind of getting aligned in terms of this AI vision for the organization. Maybe RK, you may want to kind of get started on this. I was thinking it would help us to kind of set this premise in terms of how the technology companies are looking at AI vision for them, and how QA is falling in place in terms of that vision. You may want to kind of get started with that, RK.
Yeah, sure. It's a nice question. Very importantly, I think it's more relevant in the current situation. As you rightly mentioned, there's a lot of buzz around AI, and everyone is interested to know what is that AI going to bring it to me. So similarly, the organizations are also looking at what is the value that they can get out of AI, be it in the form of their product offerings or service offerings, or the internal process, how they can improve their internal process. So quality engineering is definitely a cost function. So how we reduce the costs and improve the efficiency and effectiveness is what matters most when it comes to the quality. And the quality engineering has transformed a lot over a period of time. And this another period or another situation where the QE again has to undergo a tremendous transformation in adopting AI. So in this case, what I say is there are multiple areas where the AI can have its presence in the overall QE process, be it process or tools or the overall activities, to bring in more efficiency and effectiveness around this area. So and there are few other areas which QE could not go, like extreme shift left. So we could accomplish a shift left to a certain extent, but how can you go extreme shift left? So that is one area where AI can take us. So what it also means is that this gives us an opportunity for all the quality engineers to go beyond the horizons what we have seen and look at newer horizons. So this has a bigger impact on the overall industry as such, and importantly, how we embrace this is what defines how this shapes up over a period of time.
Interesting, RK. I think you kind of spoke about expanding the horizons here, and also you spoke about how it is helping us in terms of not just bettering the internal process, but also kind of bringing out the offerings here. And I'll kind of pick more brains in terms of the extreme shift left that you are talking about. I am sure it is something that for us to kind of dwell more into. But before I kind of talk more on that, Yagna, maybe on the similar lines, how do you kind of envision the overall AI strategy and the quality engineering kind of complementing to that? Maybe it would help you kind of hear your thoughts as well on this.
Yeah. So Dheeraj, actually, so there are a few things that we need to focus as QE teams. Like one is actually the velocity, and second one is the quality itself, right? I mean, it's always circus of balancing both in our day-to-day life, right? And this is where actually I think the magic pill of AI is coming into picture. So it actually helps the organization in a broader way as a business enabler, by improving the customer experience, right? By improving the quality, directly, or by helping the support teams with required SOPs or workarounds, right? Which can actually help the customers immediately relieve from the pain, and also increase the operational efficiency, right? It can be at an organization level, or it can be at a QE organization level also, right? Which includes test automation, or like as RK is telling, shift left, so that we find the issues at the start of the cycle, so that we have more time to fix, or it's a uh, not so costly affair, right? Also, it also reduces the time to market, because if you find the bugs early, like your test cycles will be less, and then you will be able to take it to the market. And these days it's all like who is first, not who is the best, right? Because things are changing every day, so by the time we think like we are best, the best is gone out of the market, right? So that is how actually I think AI helps in the business. And also there are two aspects, right? Like one is testing through AI or testing AI itself. So most of the time actually we are here discussing about testing through AI. Also there is a perspective of testing AI itself, because AI has its own problems as well, right? Which is actually the biases sometimes, or the hallucinations it gets because of more innovation. So we need to actually have a tap on that. As QA engineers, we need to uh, test instead of believing anything, right? So that is the aspect that we need to take care, be cautious, but at the same time reap the fruits of AI.
Uh, Great, Yagna. You spoke about the velocity and quality there, right? And also you touched upon both the aspects, testing through AI, and also testing for AI. Maybe trying to kind of dwell more into testing through AI aspect here, right? So while again touching upon the essential pillars in terms of velocity and quality, and again with the objective in terms of how do we kind of uh, try to discover the bugs early in the cycle. I think these are the typical things that we are trying to marry here, when we are talking about fostering innovation, ensuring velocity quality, while kind of addressing how do we kind of catch bugs early. RK did mention about quality engineering being a cost function, and I think catching bugs early is one great contribution towards not just cutting down quality engineering costs, but also the overall engineering cost, basically, right? So maybe if I can kind of ask you to continue a bit on Yagna in terms of, while we are talking about these pillars, what do you think are the typical components that go into kind of building this into quality engineering? What different aspects, be it use cases or be it the aspects that you think are essential for the quality engineering leaders, or in general the engineering teams, to kind of look into? Do you want to kind of dwell a bit more deeper into that?
Yeah, I can actually take you through some of the tools or process that we can use to reap more benefits from AI enablement in the organization, especially in QA organization,
Interesting.
to improve the velocity and quality, or do this circus of balancing both, right? So one such thing actually we tried, and we are in the process of actually understanding more about that, is AI-powered test automation tools, right? Which actually takes the PRD, which will have requirements, and HLD, which will have design document, and the story acceptance criteria, and generates test cases. At the same time, also generates a test automation, or at least the skeleton code of the test automation. So if it's a fresh, actually it will be able to generate everything, but because most of the organizations already have existing test frameworks, so it will actually create a skeleton structure using that. So similar thing actually we are right now using in our organization, and we are able to automate at least the news stories, right? And the biggest problem is not actually automating the new test cases, but actually it is about maintaining the existing test cases. So here we can easily implement self-healing test automation tool, which actually based on the requirement changes, or based on the design changes, or based on the contract changes, it will be able to change the API or UI test cases, I mean, at least we can start with that, and then we can actually think of more backend related test cases, right? So it's kind of self-healing because it is actually adapting to the new changes instead of those changes coming to the QA engineer and then he or she actually implementing those changes, or we are waiting for the failure of the test case and then actually correct it. So it utilizes unnecessary triaging time and all, right? So that is the second perspective. Third one is actually the risk analysis through AI, right? Or we can call it as AI based defect prediction, right? But where actually we are continuously understanding the kind of issues which are happening after our testing. It can be in staging or production, and then analyzing them through AI, and then understanding what kind of things should be implemented in test processes or test frameworks to make sure that that kind of problems will not happen in the future. So this not only just recommends things, but also implements those recommendations on its own, and then wait for our approval to execute them, right? And the biggest problem we face, at least in our company, is actually the test data generation itself, because we have variety of flavors of our product which is being run at customer sites, and sometimes actually, we don't have so much of energy and time to generate all those kinds of data. Whereas actually, if we get a sample of those data, production data, by actually removing all the personally identifiable information and then provide it to the AI augmented test data generators, it will actually generate this data with multiple corner cases and all, and then we can use it for our test purposes, which will actually, again, as our case telling, we can find bugs at the early of the cycle instead of waiting for the end, which actually customers find the bug and then he'll have dissatisfaction, right? At the same time, we can also use the same data for our performance analysis, because this data is more accurate with respect to the customer data. So these are few things that we can use for enabling AI in our QA processes.
Sure. We spoke about self-healing. We spoke about risk analysis. We spoke about the use cases around test data and also the performance analysis. I'm sure the audience are kind of also trying to kind of check are making a note of it, and then they're also quickly trying to understand the tools. Yagna, do you want to kind of quickly repeat the tool names? Looks like audience missed that, but I think we have pondered on the right use cases there.
Yeah, so we have several open source as well as customizable tools. So most of the and also commercial tools, right, like Kenya and others. But at this point of time, what we identified based on our analysis is it's better actually, you create these tools using Python libraries with ChatGPT as or Gemini as backend, because most of our use cases are different, and it's better that we create our own tools for these instead of using any of the co-pilots or any of the tools right now which are in the market, because we really don't know how customized they are.
Understand. Great. I kind of have a couple of follow-up questions, to you, RK, from the audience as well on the, extreme shift left that we were talking about. Before I kind of, quickly pick that up, maybe a, quick call out to all the audience here. There's an AI-powered, test automation framework that, Qapitol has been kind of, implementing to for a lot of its customers. In case anyone are kind of, interested in having a look at that, framework demo, please, feel free to ping your official IDs, email IDs, in the comment section. Thanks. Thank you so much. So, RK, one of the audience were talking about, what is the use of this, shift left here, right? While we quickly touched upon it, maybe you may want to kind of, talk a bit more in terms of the extreme shift left, we were talking about, and also you may want to kind of, cover, your thoughts on the use cases and, what it takes to kind of, build them.
Okay. See, the couple of advantages. I'll first talk about the advantages of the shift left for the benefit of the audience who do not know. So shift left is a concept where we advance the testing much earlier in the cycle than doing it at later point in time. So this helps the developers to get the feedback much earlier, so that the cost of fixing a bug, identification and cost of fixing a bug is much lesser, and also the quality of the product that comes out would be of much higher quality. So these are the advantages that we get by shifting left. So few practices that we started implementing in the industry are setting up the pipelines at the earlier stages, giving a continuous feedback to the developer than waiting for the tester to come and run the test. And in these things, test automation has started playing an important role in getting the right results at the right time. So now, when I talk about extreme shift left, so how can I give the feedback to the developers much earlier than what the developers are getting it now? So there are a couple of spaces that we can cover. That's number one is at the pull request validation. So pull request validation is one area where before the code is merged, then we would like to run the test to ensure that actually getting into the second one is complete test automation suite against the PRV. Identify only those impacted test scripts that needs an execution.
Not sure if we are losing RK.
Yeah, we are losing RK.
Sure. Maybe we'll just kind of, give him a minute to kind of, come back. Meanwhile, like now, we'll kind of, quickly, I have a couple of quick questions for you, from the audience. A couple of them were talking about, a couple of them are talking about KNAI, and also a couple of them are also kind of, interested to kind of, delve a bit into test data generation. Do you want to talk about, typical, challenges around it? RK, sorry, we just lost you for few brief seconds. Do you want to kind of continue where you left? Yeah, now you may want to kind of continue.
Yeah. KNAI actually is one of the tool which actually was announced a month back. So still beta program is happening, and then I was also I have enrolled myself as a beta user. So I think we need more time to understand how it is, and how good and difficult it is to use. But I can actually discuss about typical challenges that we face when we try to enable our organizations with AI, right? So one definite thing is is actually skill gap. So most of the people actually either have misunderstanding of what AI is and what AI can do, right? More than not having understanding, this is the bigger problem what I have seen, because they assume that AI can be used like this, or AI can do this, whereas actually generative AI has different other functionalities or capabilities, right? So that is where actually we need these kind of orientation webinars or seminars, where we can actually understand, as have coming from the same background, QA background, we can understand like how can we utilize or enrich our QA experiences with AI, right? So that is one important problem or challenge I have faced with the audience. Sorry, with the QE is actually the skill gaps, right? Second problem is actually integration with the existing tools, right? So for example, like we say that we have different tool coming into picture. So if we start using that tool, so what happens with our existing test cases, test data, test environments, and test tools, right? So that is where we need some support from services which can actually help us in either connecting all of them, or correcting them so that we can adopt the previous tools also into AI, right? Because we'll be having some 5,000, 7,000 test cases, existing test case. We can't actually, drop all of them and then start using the new tools. So that is one of the integration with the existing tools is another problem, right? The third important problem is actually with the data quality and availability. So AI or generative AI works best when it has all required context, right? So if it doesn't have the required context, so it is as good as an intern, right? So it creates all kind of problems because it doesn't know what we are talking about, right? So when we give that context, because in some of the organizations data is not maintained with quality, right, or in the or with required details and all, so this actually creates some challenges to enable AI in these organizations. At the same time, we need sufficient data to train our models, or to actually give the context for any of these chat gpt or Gemini kind of tools. So if we don't provide them, the output definitely will be of lower quality, and then which actually may send signals in the organization that this is not a useful thing, right? So these are the few challenges that we have seen. So where actually we need experts who can actually help, who are already working on these kind of AI to give better data, or to at least help us in what data we need to collect and then train these models, or give the context.
Uh, Great. I think the point that you touched upon in terms of building integrations with existing tools, right, and also about the data quality, Yagna. And I think that is where you're also kind of also talking about building custom utilities basis custom context there, right? I think those things are kind of very helpful here. RK, sorry, we kind of lost you when we were talking about the extreme shift left. We want to kind of continue that, and I'll kind of pick in terms of further in terms of metrics and things. So before I go there, I just want to kind of hear more on that front, RK.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, and sorry for the network glitches. So the point what I'm trying to make here, Dheeraj, is the advantages that we get with extreme shift left and the newer horizons, which I was talking about earlier. Is this is one area where we can hit upon the newer areas, like during the pull request validation, to ensure that the tested code gets into the repo. We can use AI technologies to identify the impacted areas that the test scripts need to run against, and run only those tests to ensure that the pull request validation is done appropriately for the changes that are being done, and ensure that the impacted areas are tested before the code is merged into the repo. So this is one important area where we started making use of in a couple of our projects internally. And the second area where we can also think of is the static code analysis as the developer writes. So when the developer starts writing the code, then give them the feedback on the value or the potential bugs that they are introducing, be it on the performance space or on the security space or on the or even on the function space. So this is another area where the AI can come and help the developers to get the feedback right at the time when they are coding, to ensure that that the code that they are developing is of higher quality. So there are many other areas where we can leverage and get into the newer horizons, but getting to the extreme left, these are couple of important use cases that I can think of, Dheeraj.
Thanks, RK. I think one important point that caught my attention, right? In terms of these use cases where how do we kind of validate right at the pull request, and then also kind of contributing a lot of early testing and things there. Maybe it will also help us to kind of dwell a bit in terms of certain stories or examples business your experience as well, either in this use case or any other use cases. Maybe couple would really kind of help. While we are talking about the use cases, it will also kind of I was just kind of trying to see if we can touch upon certain examples there. That would also kind of give us a little bit of perspective on that.
Yeah, so we all like to hear the success stories from the bigger organizations. So let me pick a couple of them here. Microsoft uses something called a tricorder, if I remember correctly. It's called tricorder internally, which they use to do the static code analysis. The point what I was referring to, where the developer gets the early feedback, is what actually is done by this tool. So these are proprietary tools and they are not available for everyone's usage. So and this is AI enabled tool. Similarly, Meta has one tool which can run their, especially the Facebook related one, which can run the Facebook releases before it releases on multiple mobile systems. It generates the test cases, it generates the automation scripts, and executes on multiple resolutions and multiple mobile devices, and gives the feedback, and all this happening at a very faster pace. So and we know the quality of the products that we get from these bigger companies. So there are many such type of examples that we can take, and these are currently the proprietary tools that these companies use. As Yagna mentioned, it is very important that we need to identify what actually is appropriate for our organization and for our needs, and identify the appropriate tools, or build the tools using the ecosystem that we already have in place. We are lucky that there are lots of models that are available for us, and pick out the right model and start developing it. And importantly, it's how you train the model for your needs is what the result that you get. If you train the model, or if you use a trained model which is not suiting your needs, but based on the popularity you go for that, you might not get the right results. So it is important that we need to identify what is the model and what is the training that you need to carry that out. So you need to create a sub model out of it by doing an appropriate training for you, and then build the tools that supports you, or engage with someone who can help you do this. So these are the important steps that we need to take before we venture into doing something on AI.
Very insightful and well said, RK, in terms of how one should kind of look into applying that to their context. Talking about examples, Yagna, I see that multiple people also kind of asked questions around how do we kind of make use of it for the data generation. You may question, and also maybe follow it up with a couple of examples or success stories.
Yeah. So I think we need to first understand actually what is meant by data generation here, right? So there are different varieties of data that we generate for testing the system, right? So one is, for example, right, you need to test an API or UI. So we need to actually check for the accuracy of the data, right? For example, if you are giving invalid username, invalid password, or with the invalid format of email ID, right? So these data generation is very easy for any AI tool, because it actually goes through the requirements, and based on that it understand what set is actually valid, what set is not valid, what set is boundary value, because it is also trained as a ISTQB certified engineer, right? So because it has also gone through all those training already, so it knows actually what kind of buckets actually we have test data, so it will generate, right? So second kind of data generation is where actually we are using any kind of mathematical functions or statistical functions, right? So where, for example, we have a report which gets generated by aggregating some column of some table, right? It can be a structured data, unstructured data, like in big data, right? So for all those things also, we'll be able to generate that data. So you can directly use a Python library and then connect to the ChatGPT or Gemini, and then ask it like, this is what actually the ultimate result will be like, or this is what actually the query which is being used. Now you generate data for me. So if you write that prompt, actually it will be able to give, or you can actually have your own some kind of wrapper which actually reads these requirements also from your Jira, and then directly generates this data. So you can use any way. So you have both the kinds of data. One is actually simple data, and then second one is where you are using it for statistical functions, right? Or sometimes actually you need to actually generate a product, different kinds of products for testing as an input data. So where also you need to actually make it understand, give the context, what kind of attributes will be there for the product, um, what are the possible values for those things and all. So you give the context, and then it will add its intelligence or innovativeness, and then it will be able to generate the data.
Uh, Very good, dimension to the test data as well, right? Going beyond the, boundary value analysis or the in general, test data that, any tester would usually kind of, look into. Thank you so much for, that, perspective here, Yagna. Maybe, while we are talking about different tools and use cases, I just want to make one quick call out to the audience as well here. From Capital's perspective, we had released a quality engineering trends report last time, and we have a edition 2 of that as well, kind of being released now. So if anyone wants to kind of take a look at it, please feel free to drop your official email ID in the comments section. And RK, I just want to kind of continue on couple of aspects, right? While we spoke about different use cases, and while Yagna was talking about couple of use cases and success stories, he did also touch upon couple of challenges for the tech organizations to implement it, right? Be it the skill gap, or be it how do we kind of marry it with the existing tools, or and things like that. Any challenges that you want to kind of highlight from your experience in terms of while implementing this innovation, or again if any challenges, any typical approaches that have really worked for you there, basically, right? You may want to kind of give a big perspective in terms of your experience in terms of challenges and typical solutions while we bring in this innovation into the culture.
Yeah, one important thing is anyone who wants to get into AI needs to have a lot of patience. So you will not get the results quickly in a snap. So it takes time. So we need to have the patience, and it is important, or it is also important that we need to look at the data that we are going to use to train these models. So if you do not train the model appropriately, you will not get the desired results. So you do not you will not get the right results, and if you tend to put blame on the AI than on the data set that you have. So choose the data that you want to train the model on appropriately, and more data that you use to train, the more effective it would be. And the third important one that I also want to highlight is ensure that you are training the model continuously. It's not just like you train it and you are done and it should give you the results. No, it's an evaluation process. So you need to continuously train the model to ensure that you get the results, and get the results that are appropriate to you at the time. So most of the times we tend to train the model and then assume that it is trained, and now you get the results continuously over a period of time. It might give you the right results for the next few months or few years, but as the time proceeds, you will not get the results because it is trained with the older data set, but not with the latest one. So it is important that we need to have a continuous training training pipeline that is established for this. Now, the third one is also to evaluate this. So how are you going to evaluate the effectiveness of this AI model? And very importantly, what is the value that it is bringing in? So are you really getting the value that you are looking for? If not, I think we have chosen the wrong space, or we don't have the sufficient data for us to train it in that model. So let's go to the next one, is something that we may have to look at. So continuous assessment is also important to see what is the value that we get out of it. Otherwise, you will be pulled into a black hole, and you might not find a way to come out at some point. So regular assessment is also equally important on these areas, Dheeraj.
Of course, RK, right, rightly said, while we're talking about these, results and, assessments, right, and you also rightly spoke about how it is, important for organizations to have patience to kind of, look into the results, right? While we touched upon, multiple use cases and then, couple of challenges and maybe the right ways to kind of, look at it, again, right, so typically even in my experience, when I'm talking to a lot of engineering leaders and then the tech organizations in terms of what to expect out of these use. See, while right from your test requirement understanding to test case identification, prioritization, and in terms of the overall automation development and scripting, we really see a lot of use cases across, and we also try touching upon a few challenges. Even so what I was saying is in my conversations, while I see there are evident use cases where we can kind of bring in AI. There are good set of tools already in the market coming out, and also of course we have also discussed about organizations custom building them based on their context and then trying to solve the problems in place, right? Maybe what I was thinking, what would also help probably the audience here, or even in my experience when I'm talking to the leaders, one typical aspect is about, okay, there are use cases, there are thought process, there is thought process, there are solutions. So while we implement these, how do we kind of look at the performance, right? So how do we measure this? How do we, are there any certain specific metrics that we need to kind of think about, or the right, again, while there are a lot of metrics, what are the right metrics? Well, again, metrics could be contextual to the organization as well, but in general, maybe basis few use cases that you implemented or you built, or you saw results, etc. It would have, I was thinking it would help for us to kind of throw some light in terms of how do we kind of assess the progress of it, the results of it, KPIs, metrics, and whatnot. I thought that would be a good you know point to kind of dwell upon. Maybe Ignat, do you want to kind of pick that first?
Yeah. So, I mean, we can broadly categorize these metrics into three, at least, right? One is actually efficiency metrics, one is effectiveness metrics, and one is cost metrics. And when we actually take the efficiency metrics, so number one actually comes for us is test automation coverage. So if you have more test automation, then we can find the bugs early in the stages, at least from the regression perspective. And also we can go to the market faster. Right. So the test automation coverage is number one metric. Second one is actually the test execution time. Right. I mean, so when we may have a question like if it's automated, why it still takes a test execution? Because of the prioritization of the test cases, or selection of the test cases for that particular release or build, or the way they are getting executed, whether it's sequential, parallel. So how can we make sequential test to parallel? Right. Sometimes it's not straightforward. We can still take help from the AI in this case also. And the third one is test script maintenance, which actually talks indirectly about self-healing automation frameworks through AI. Right. So these are the three metrics we have, like test automation coverage, execution time, and script maintenance time, or test maintenance time. And second one is the effectiveness, right? So we use these for operational things, the previous ones. But what about the quality, right? The quality or the effectiveness, actually, number one is actually defect rate. So out of how many total defects in the system for this particular release, how many of the defects leak to the customer or leak to the final stages, right? So here also we can use AI tools to get this information and then take appropriate actions. And then the test accuracy, which is actually false negatives or false positives, both sides is not good for us. And then release quality. Release quality is culmination of defect, leak, test coverage, and execution speed, and all those things. And final thing is about cost metrics. So we have um, cost, like how much time we are taking to resolve a defect which any person has actually reported. It can be at any stage. Especially how much of the cost is being involved in post-release defect fixes, right? And then the important metric, because we are actually using AI, and we are actually investing some time in enabling AI and then training our models or buying some tools, right? So what is the ROI on this AI investment? So these are the metrics actually we can use for, and all of these metrics should be aligned with business outcomes. So otherwise actually businesses may think that we are spending unnecessary work and time which is not aligned with their businesses, so they may not actually provide us the budget or provide us a free hand to actually work on these things, right? So for that actually we need to align these things to with the business metrics, like release cycle time or quality of the product at the customer, right?
Uh,
Yeah.
Great. While the efficiency metrics are something that I've kind of heard from a lot of organizations implementing. I like the effective metrics part of it, Yagna, because I'm sure that is something that at least in my conversations with across organizations, that effectiveness metrics is something probably less looked into or less thought of. I'm sure that's a good takeaway or a summary for this point. RK, do you want to kind of add anything on top of it? Well, I have good bunch of questions coming in from people to kind of take in as well, but I thought I'll just quickly check with you.
I think Yagna covered all aspects of metrics sufficiently. I think I don't have anything more to add to that.
Interesting. Then maybe a quick point around performance. I'm having a few questions around beyond automation, right? So any thoughts on performance testing both for API and UI with regards to the AI space? That seems to be one question coming in. I'll quickly see if I can club it with any similar question. I also have a question about people talking about how do we kind of look into it from the contracts perspective as well. I think it's again the API aspect of it kind of covers there. um, do you want to kind of pick this up, maybe Yagna?
Yeah. So when we actually talk about API and UI testing, right? So two important things we need to take into consideration, as you pointed, Dheeraj. Actually, one is the test data, right? And the second one is the contract itself, because many times actually these contracts keep changing as the requirements change or the as the business evolves, right? So keeping with that pace, all our test tooling or test cases updated is the biggest challenge actually, which I know about API testing and UI testing with any interface testing. Actually, we used to be having CLI testing also when I started my career, but these days there are no CLIs. But all these API interfaces have the same problem, right? Because they are interacting with the customers, the need will be changing. So people have used packed kind of testing, right, for contract testing, but that itself is a kind of overhead with having less time for the QA engineers to work on the testing activities overall, right? So that can also be taken help through AI to keep those tests in line with the open API doc kind of repository. So if you have open API, then it should be able to write packed kind of tests by itself, and then even we can ask it to evaluate how effective it is, right? So that's how actually we can use for functional testing of API and UI, right? And when it goes to performance testing, we need to actually we can actually take help from the AI to analyze the existing performance results if the product is already live, right, at multiple sites, through multiple tools like Grafana dashboards and all, and then and actually we can give it context, like what kind of configurations that, for example, like in our product actually we have thousands of configurations, right? Finding the right configuration to fine tune itself is actually the biggest problem for us in performance, right? So
Right.
you can't actually do that combinations manually, right? So if you actually see or seek the help of AI to understand what is the correlation between um, uh, you know uh, uh, those things along with the performance data, and then ask it like for suggestions, like what kind of performance tests we can actually run to give more context to itself, right? So we can take that as a first step. We can ask suggestion for a suggestion, right? And then run these tests, feed more data to it so that actually it is trained properly, and then it will be able to help us understand what kind of fine tuning we can do. It is not just for QA, but it's at an organization level, how we can help the customer, right, with the right set of configurations.
Yeah, configurations are always a greater and greater challenges when we try to kind of cover across. I think that was a interesting point there. Especially given especially on the performance side of it. For the large scale products, the SaaS applications and things like that. Uh, I think we are getting into the last 10 minutes now. While I'll just take a quick question from the audience in here. There is there is this prevailing point around what threats AI brings in, right? I think while we spoke about use cases, challenges, and its implementation evaluation, I see a couple of audience trying to kind of get our take, the speaker's take on this aspect. Should we kind of pick that up in as we are kind of getting into the last hours now? Maybe RK, do you want to kind of take that up?
Yeah. Can you please repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, so it is about the take on the threat that AI is kind of bringing onto the QA engine. Is the regular
Okay.
point that everyone want to kind of everyone is kind of trying to find
Okay.
answers around. Yeah,
I think this actually has been the state of queuing quality engineers for some time now. Since the time the importance of testers have come in, as I mentioned earlier, the quality horizons have started expanding for some time now, and the testers, unless they expand and meet those horizons, will not be able to scale up appropriately in the industry. So what they need to do is they need to upskill themselves in doing these things. But it is definitely not a threat for the testers at the moment, as I see, because the manual intervention is always required, and the data to train the models is generated manually. I mean, from the testers with the data that they have generated. So it is always important to understand the value that they are bringing in, and also complement their efforts by adding AI ingredient into their overall space. See, it's something like I correlate this with a hunter. A hunter is if provided with a different types of arrows to hunt different animals, is what actually it is. It's AI is one such type of tool for them to hunt for the bugs effectively. So I think they should not see that the tool that they have will totally replace them. Is not the right analogy that I can think of.
I think that was a good summary or a wrap up to the sort of a conversation that we have been having on RK. Maybe again in your while you're within your teams, or when you're kind of trying to have conversations with the testers around, typically on these lines, right? While we're talking about different innovation and different use cases, and also how it is kind of actually started showcasing results. Yagna, maybe in your experience, on the similar lines of how we enable QA engineers to kind of have this perspective. Do you want to share your thoughts on how you kind of bring in this culture into your teams? Typically, maybe that would be a good one for us also to kind of wrap up this session.
Yeah, I think in the comments also we have seen some questions related to we should not actually understand everything about AI before using the AI, right? So that is a similar kind of questions actually I have, my team has, and the entire organizations have, right? I think that is where actually we need to take our first step to understand that there are two perspectives, right? Actually, one is understanding about the internals, and second is actually to understand how best we can use this particular tool or process or new methodology. I think that's where actually we have taken the first step, and it is better to know the internals, we agree, but at the same time, if we can actually reap fruits out of it without knowing much internals to start with, it is good, because companies won't give you a lot of budget to first understand it for 6 months and then use it. Actually, you need to show what is the return on investment within a quarter, so that actually they can allocate more budget, and then teams can actually work on that space, right? So that is where actually we started understanding it, and we have done the pilot projects, small pilot projects, to help us understand what exactly this is, right? What kind of benefits we get. That's how actually we have taken the first step, and then we started using it for our test case writing, and then test automation skeleton generator, right? And then as we keep on doing it, we understood few things, like it is not just a tool to generate these things, but it can actually analyze a lot of data. That's where we started using it to analyze our production bugs and then come up with recommendations, right? And also it's a really good tool for helping us in onboarding, right? Onboarding the new engineers to the team. So that is also one more perspective that we need to take help from AI, especially Gen AI, because a lot of the engineers, because the companies are like 10 years old, 11 years old, there is a lot of domain expertise which is built, and then which is actually written in many places, right? And then to get that all those things into the mind of a new person, it's not easy, right? Yeah, and they can't actually keep everything in the mind, so it's better actually you give some skeleton or some kind of layout, and then they can actually go and then seek help from these kind of tools, right? Where it can be a UI like ChatGPT on top of your entire domain expertise of your company, where they can ask the question and then they can get help at the required time, right?
That was an good closing notes, I would say, RK, and I'm sure audience have also kind of made a note of it, because it really helps to kind of have that perspective while you kind of approach your regular work with a lot of innovation, trying to kind of push you up. With this, maybe one quick call out to audience. Uh, I think we tried picking up on good use cases and the components into QE and the challenges, and of course the metrics as well. But if you have any suggestions in terms of what should be our next webinar topic, please request you all to kind of put in your suggestions in the comment section. RK and Yagna, right now I'm sure each of the points that you are talking about are worth delving more deeper. But I think that really was a good touch in terms of all the key points. What was more interesting is to kind of really hear about what are those success stories, and of course the inputs for the people in terms of how do they measure it and then take it forward. I'm sure it was interesting conversation. Audience, please feel free to kind of let us know uh, any suggestions on the further topics that you want us to dwell more. Hope all of you enjoyed. Maybe it's time for us to kind of sign off. This. Thank you so much, RK and Yagna. It was absolute pleasure, touching upon all of these interesting points.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Dheeraj.
Dheeraj, for the
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. Looking forward to connecting with all of you in our next webinar soon.